Yeah, so we're now going to talk about the how do we evaluate the buttons. Buttons are normally the most prevalent buttons are made of polyester. They are the cheapest and they are the most strong, so to say, when we talk about garments. Now, buttons, we test the buttons for durability, and it is tested by impact test. Now, the picture that we see is that of a button impact tester. What happens over here is that button is kept at the bottom of the plate that you see, and there is a falling mass about 840 grams, which is 29.5 ounce. It is dropped from a height of 67 mm, which is like 2.625 inches. We drop it on the button, and then the button is inspected for cracking or chipping or breakage. Now, if we can clearly see cracking, chipping or breakage, it means the button has failed the durability test. And this testing is done for all such orders in which buttons are involved. Now, there's another testing called wear testing. Now, wear testing is when we wear garments, we wear it for a lot of times and for long periods. It gets worn off. So wear testing here is how fast or how slowly the garment they wear. Now in this visual, we can see Julia Roberts. She's wearing sweatshirts and she's wearing denims, and of course these are toned denims. But you can see that there is a white fabric backing at the knee, which has been given over there. And then she's carrying two bags. Now these bags they are going to brush against her thigh, and she's carrying the bag from the crook of her arm. The another bag it is hanging from her elbow. Now if there is a lot of load there, then the sling of the bag that is going to brush against the elbow and the shoulder. Now when you are making garments, we have to be careful, we have to be thoughtful that the garment that you are going to sell, the customer is going to use that garment in different situations of their life. They'll be wearing the garment, they'll be sitting, they'll be lying down, they may be rolling on the sand or so many things. So we need to evaluate the behavior and performance of garment in real life. Now, so we're going to look at one such example. Now, what are the approvals required in an export order? Now, let's see here. Now, approvals required for a lady's blouse. Now, we can see a blouse over here. Now, I just want to clarify here that there is something called Indian blouse. Indian blouse is worn with a sari. That is an Indian blouse. Worldwide, when we talk about international trade, and blouse is not the Indian blouse. Blouse is the shirt that you're seeing over here in the slide, and this is technically described as ladies short sleeves front open formal blouse with pointed collar. We always talk about the sex first, which is ladies. Then we talk about, so when we are talking about the top, we are talking about the sleeves first, which is short sleeve. It can be sleeveless, puff sleeve or a French sleeve or a short sleeve or half sleeve or three-quarter sleeve or long sleeve. We don't say full sleeve, we say long sleeve internationally. And the blouse, then we talk about the opening, which is it's a front open formal blouse with pointed collar. Top is essentially such a product which has to be worn from the top. Blouse is something which is it has an opening in the front or the back or the side, and it is not worn from the top like a t-shirt. So we are going to look at the approvals required for ladies blouse. Now, what do we see in this picture is there's the fabric. It has buttons. It is a formal blouse, so therefore it will have the fusing or the interlining at the collar and at the front placket, both the button placket as well as the buttonhole placket. And then of course it would have its main label, size label, care label, and then country of origin label, and then it will be put inside poly bag, and then it will be put inside the carton. Carton would be made of paper, and then carton would have its own marking, and then there'll be stickers, size sticker as well as other stickers, which is pasted on the carton. So approval is required for all of those things. So here we're just taking some of those key things like fabric approvals, accessories approval. Here we have the buttons, and we also have the stitching thread, and then of course the labels, etc. And then we have a blouse here. So automatically we are looking at measurements and the fit. Now the fit looks impeccable, absolutely perfect. And then the measurements have to be correct. And aesthetically it should look good. And aesthetically, the light blue that we are seeing over here, it should match, or it should be closely matching with the standard given by the buyer. And then of course lab tests, which is physical and chemical properties. Now lab tests are those things which cannot be evaluated by our naked eyes. Just by looking at something, we say, yeah, this is good, the fit is good, or the measurement, I put a measuring tape or a scale, and then I say, yeah, it's correct or not correct. So those are inspections. Lab tests are your physical and chemical properties, which have to be done by the lab. So we want to talk about each of them one by one. Now, fabric. First thing, we have the gray fabric. This looks like a poplin, 13272, 40s poplin. Now, 40s poplin means warped and weft. The yarn which is being used, the count is 40s, and construction is 132 by 72. It means 132 yarns per inch in the warp direction, and 72 yarns per inch in the weft direction. That is the construction, 132 72. So that is the construction. And then the GSM. Now this looks like a blouse which would have a GSM of 705, 110 GSM. GSM is grams per square meter. So first we have to get the gray fabric. The count and construction GSM should be correct. So you have to send it across to the buyer for the approval. Once the buyer gives the approval for the gray fabric, then you send the fabric for dyeing. So when you send the fabric for dyeing, first you get only 2 meters of fabric. You get it dyed and get it approved from the buyer. That is called lab dip. Once that color is approved, then you get the bulk fabric dyed. Once you get the bulk fabric dyed or processed, then you take the approval from the buyer for the color, for the count, for the construction, for the GSM, and then of course the lab tests have to be done. So if the lab test is done and the test reports are sent to the buyer for approval. So whatever color fastness, crocking, fabric strength, etc., which the buyer has demanded before placing the order, all of that has to be fulfilled by your fabric when it has been sent to the lab for testing. Now, you do the count construction GSM in gray. Now, you will ask, sir, why do we need to do the GSM and construction and count everything again for the bulk fabric? Now, the thing is that the count and the construction and the GSM changes when you dye or print the fabric. That's why again the bulk processed fabric has to be sent to the lab for the testing. So this is prima facie what the approvals that are required from the buyer in terms of fabric. Now let's say we talk about the accessories. The first accessory that we can see is the button. Now the button, size of the button in terms of the diameter, number of holes. It can be single hole, no hole, 2 hole, 4 hole. So you can't be using a 2 hole or a 4 hole just like that. You have to take the approval from the buyer for the size, for the number of holes, the color of the button. Now this could be a white button, or this could be a tone on tone, or DTM, dyed to match. So tone on tone or DTM means the button would be of the same color as the color of the blouse, color of the fabric of the blouse. So whatever that is, you have to get the button approved for size, for number of holes, for color, for thickness of the button, and for the strength of the button. All of that has to be tested and submitted to the buyer for approval. Number two is stitching thread. Stitching thread again for the color, for the thickness of the thread. Stitching thread normally when we get the bulk fabric, let's say blue fabric over here, we, we take the stitching thread, we run the stitches on the fabric, this blue fabric, so that we can see that the stitching thread, how good or how well it is matching with the color of the fabric. So we run it on, we make, let's say, 10 lines of the stitching thread on this fabric and then send it to the buyer for approval. So stitching thread is sent for approval. The buttoning thread. Now stitching thread is different from the thread which is used for buttoning. So buttoning thread also has to be used for approval for the thickness, or the diameter, or for the count, and for the color. Buttonhole thread also is different, that also has to be submitted for approval. Then because we have this fusing or interlining at the collar and cuff, sorry, the collar and the placket, front placket. So that fusing or interlining also has to be submitted for approval. Approval of the color, GSM, and the type. Now there are woven interlining, there is knitted interlining, and there is also non-woven interlining. Now, thumb rule, knitted interlinings are used only for knits. Woven interlining or non-woven is used for wovens. So whatever type of fusing, the color and the GSM, it has to be. So you take a piece of fabric, you fuse it with this interlining, iron it well, and then you send it across to the buyer for approval. So the buyer can see that the fused fabric with the interlining, how does it look, how does it feel, what is the form, whether it is correct or not. So the buyer is going to give you the approval on that fused fabric. And then of course we have the main label, the size label, and the care label. Now main label and size label is fairly simple. The main label, design, everything will be given to you by the buyer. Same for the size label. Care label is not given to you by the buyer. Care label, you will, what is to be written in the care label, wash care label, will come from the lab. So once you have got the garment, you send it to the lab for garment testing. Then the lab will give you the care instruction. Once you get the care instruction, only then you can get the care label done. So once you get the care instruction, you have to get it approved from the buyer. Once they approve it, then you will immediately order the care labels. Then you have the hand tag, the price ticket. That is again something which is the entire content is and the design is provided by the buyer. So you get it made in India from your vendor, get samples made, send it to the buyer for approval. Once it is approved, then the bulk price ticket will be done. Same for the poly bag and the sticker, and for the carton, for the marking, for the sealing. Sealing is, in terms of with the sellotape, with stapling. There are many methods of sealing the carton. And marking is where you have a sticker, and then you have to, what are the things that you are going to write on the carton sticker. All of that has to be approved by the buyer. So these are the basic approvals related to accessories, which have to be taken from the buyer before you go ahead with the rest of the production processes. Now we come to measurement and fit. Measurement is about, the various points of measurement given by the buyer, the measurement chart. So the measurements have to be checked, which can be checked using the measuring tape. And you have to submit the fit sample, the size set sample, and then the overall fit has also to be, it also has to be approved by the buyer before, only after which you can go ahead with the bulk production. Without these approvals, you are not allowed to go ahead with the production. The buyer can always get back to you and say that, you don't take approval from me for the fit samples or the size set. How can I give you the approval for the bulk production? And if you have made the bulk production, you keep it at home. I'm not going to accept it because you did not submit the fit sample and size set sample for approval. And then we come to aesthetics. Aesthetics are the looks. See, at the end of the day, the measurements are great, fit is great, but the looks are not good. The buyer is not going to buy because looks are technically all things are okay, but it's not looking good. The buyer is not going to accept it. So the overall look of the garment, does it look good enough? Would the customers buy it? If there are some minor problems here and there, this blue shade is not exactly matching with the standard given by the buyer. But then it's slightly different, but then it's looking good. So when everything is done and the time is less, in that case, if we are at a stage where it may be accepted, maybe not. In that case, aesthetics are considered, and if it is looking good, the buyer may say, "Fine, go ahead." Even if it is not exactly matching, it's okay. I'm okay with it. I like this blouse. It's pleasant and good to the eye, and that is what we wanted from the product. So let's go ahead with it. That's the aesthetics. Balance, color, and the fit. Of course, just like the fabric test, we have the garment test. 3 garments are sent to the lab for testing. 1 garment is kept as it is, original. 2 other garments will be used by the lab and they will be doing their test. They will actually be tearing all the seams. Whatever stitches are there, they are going to actually rip it apart. And when they are ripping it apart, they will actually be testing the seam strength of all the seams which have been used in making of this, in stitching of this garment. So the seam strength will be checked by the buyer, and GPT is your garment package testing. Garment package testing, these are normally expensive. They cost anywhere around 15 to 20,000 rupees per testing. After the GPT, you will get the content for wash cap. And once the GPT is approved by the buyer, then you can go ahead with the bulk production of the shipment of the garments. Now, once you have the approval for the fabrics, for the accessories, for all the samples, and all the lab tests have been okayed, then we come to the production area, production phase. Now, the production people will have to get their own set of approvals. So, they do not start making bulk production straight away. So, they do a pilot run. They'll just make about 20, 30 odd pieces. 30 pieces, and let's say this blouse is in the order is in 3 colors and in 3 sizes. So the production people, they will make uh, at least 3 to 4 pieces in each color in each size. Each color, each size, at least 3 to 4 pieces, and they will offer for the inspection. That is what pilot run. Once that is approved, then they can go ahead with the production. When they start the production, anywhere, anytime in between, the buyer's inspector or the buyer's quality manager will come and pick up any random piece from the production. That is called TOP, top of production. That is what top of production sample. They'll just randomly pick out any piece, get it finished and get it completed, packed and everything. They'll measure it, they'll check the fit and the balance and everything. And if everything is found okay, they'll send it across to the buyer. That this is the random piece that we have picked up from the production. That is what TOP sample. Then we have a DuPro. DuPro is during production. So just like TOP, DuPro is where the production is in full swing and from the production, the pieces are taken out and sent to the buyer stating that this is the kind of quality that you are going to get. Now in production, there are inspections also. Initial inspection, mid inspection, final inspection. Now, initial inspection has to be done when 25% of the production has been completed. Mid inspection is when the 50% of production has been completed. And final inspection is when all the garments have been stitched finished, packed, ready to ship. When all the garments are in the cartons ready to ship, then you request the inspector, the quality inspector of the buyer, to come and do the final inspection. Once the final inspection has been okayed, then you can send the shipment to the airport or to the seaport, from where it will be sent to the buyer subsequently. Now, when we are talking about production, after that we have the washing and finishing approval. Now, when you are doing the washing, then the washing manager has to ensure that for every style, if washing is involved, then they have to wash two pieces and send it to the buyer for approval. And when the samples are being sent, you state on it that these samples are being sent for the approval of washing quality. If it involves dry cleaning, then it will be sent to the buyer for the approval of the dry cleaning quality. Then you also have to iron it. You iron it and send it across for approval of the ironing. So you wash it, you iron it, you fold it, you pack it, and you send it across to the buyer, and you say that please give us the approval for the washing, for the ironing, for the folding, and for the packing. Because the packed piece, you can see the packing, and you can give the approval for packing. Then you take the garment out of the packing, and then you see how it has been folded, whether you like it or not. So if you like it, then you can approve the folding. Of course, when you open the garment, unfold it, then you can see the ironing of the garment. So based on that, the ironing approval can be given. And the garment is there in front of you. You can see whether it has the washing has been done as per your requirement or not. So packed garments sent for approval of washing, ironing, folding, packing. So all that we saw in case of that blouse, it will be fairly easy for you to figure out the list of approvals that will be required for a printed t-shirt. So we go in the same manner: the fabric, the accessories, then you have the print color, the font, the size, placement of the print on the chest, the distance from the center front, and then distance from the side seams, and the size of the print as the size of the garment changes, all of that, and then the stitching thread, main level, size level, care level, wash care, lab tests, measurements, fit, everything. So all those approvals will be required for a printed t-shirt also. So depending on the garment, whatever it involves, it would mandate all those kinds of approvals that any factory has to take from the buyer in order to execute the entire order.